specifically asked for a breakdown of Levi's perspective on the history of magic. What he saw as the core principles, the ways it's appeared and been practiced across different cultures and times, and how it all connects to religion and the evolution of, well, societies, really.
So it sounds like we've got a pretty big scope to cover here.
Oh, absolutely. We're talking everything from ancient practices, Levi's own take on the differences between what he calls lawful magic and black magic, which, yeah, we'll definitely unpack that to the major figures he brings into the conversation. I mean, he talks about Zoroaster, Moses, Paracelsus, even gets into Count Cagliostro.
Whoa, Count Cagliostro. Okay, now that's a name that piques my curiosity. And then on top of all that, we've got some seriously heavy concepts to tackle, like the Kabbalah, the astral light, and all that jazz.
Yep, buckle up. This deep dive is going to be a wild one.
So where do we even begin with all of this? Like, I guess the first thing is, how did Levi himself actually define magic? Did he see it as like stage illusions and tricks or something deeper?
He definitely saw it as something far more profound. He actually describes magic as the exact and absolute science of nature and her laws. And get this, he believed it was the science practiced by, those figures we always hear about, the ancient magi.
Wait, so you're talking about those wise men from the East, the magi who visited Jesus, those guys.
Exactly. And it's interesting, right? Because there's all this reverence attached to those figures, even today. Like, people still call them mystic kings. And Levi kind of hints at the idea that this reverence actually points to a deeper truth. Like, back in the day, being a magus, being someone initiated into these mysteries, it actually carried genuine weight. It was almost like a form of royalty.
That is an interesting point. So are you saying that Levi thought this ancient magic was the source of knowledge for some of the most influential people throughout history?
That's exactly what he's suggesting. He mentions figures like Abraham, Orpheus, Confucius, even Zoroaster, and he believed their teachings were rooted in this ancient magical wisdom. And the cool thing is, he traces it all the way back to figures like Enoch and Hermes Trismegistus, who he thinks recorded these principles initially. Then, he says, Moses came along and kind of refined and veiled it again in what we now call the Holy Kabbalah.
Okay, so we're talking about some serious lineage here, passing down this profound wisdom through the ages. But, we should probably mention Levi's own background here. It's not like he was coming at this from some, like, super edgy, anti-religious standpoint, right?
Definitely not. He was actually described as, and I quote, a Catholic strongly and deeply convinced. So he wasn't trying to tear down religious beliefs at all. In fact, he said his goal was to combat impiety. But the way he wanted to do that was by revealing what he saw as the true understanding of these ancient magical practices.
So he was trying to clear up what he saw as misunderstandings or distortions.
Exactly. And he even uses this really evocative language to describe what he's fighting against. He calls it the black successor of Ahriman. Now, we'll dive into that a bit later, but essentially he's trying to address the whole problem of evil through the lens of magic as a science. And this is where his distinction between lawful magic and black magic becomes really important.
Okay, so let's break that down. What did he mean by lawful magic?
Well, for Levi, lawful magic involved working with the spirits of the planetary spheres and sometimes even, necromancy, working with the souls of the departed. He also believed in the power of certain magical tools, things like pantacles and talismans.
Hold on, pantacles and talismans, like what are those exactly?
So a pantacle is basically a disc, usually made of metal or something like that, that's inscribed with specific symbols and designs that are meant to focus energy. And talismans are kind of similar, but they're usually smaller and meant to be carried on the person for protection or to attract certain influences.
Okay, so those are tools for lawful magic, and he believed they could actually produce real results.
Right. He used the word veridic, which basically means truthful or accurate. But then he contrasts this with what he called black magic, which he pretty much dismisses as a realm of illusions and nightmares.
So even if black magic could, like, seemingly produce miraculous effects, he didn't buy it.
Nope. He saw it as deceptive and potentially dangerous.
Yeah.
Right from the get-go, he's drawing a clear line between what he considers legitimate spiritual practice and something much darker and more manipulative.
Interesting. And I'm guessing this whole concept of lawful magic, it all ties back to the Kabbalah, right?
You guessed it. Levi emphasizes the importance of the Holy Kabbalah as this, continuous tradition, something that's been passed down through generations, starting with Seth, Adam and Eve's son, and then flowing through Abraham, Joseph, Moses, and finally reaching its full expression in the book of Revelation.
Wow. So the Kabbalah is like the bedrock, the foundational framework for his entire system of magical thought.
Precisely. And to understand it, we need to grasp some of its key concepts. Levi talks about these 32 paths of wisdom, which are basically the 10 numbers called the Sephirah and the 22 letters of the Hebrew alphabet.
Okay, so these numbers and letters, they're not just random symbols, right? They actually hold a deeper meaning in Kabbalistic thought.
Right. They're like the blueprint for understanding the entire cosmos. And it gets even more interesting when Levi talks about the concept of God being represented as a duplicated image. One is upright and white, the other is inverted and black.
Wait, hold on. A duplicated image of God. So, like, two gods. What's that all about?
Well, it's not exactly two gods, but it's this ancient way of trying to convey both the intelligent, pure understanding of the divine, represented by the white image, and the more, I guess you could say, vulgar or less refined conception, represented by the black. He actually links this darker side to the Persian god, Ahriman, the principle of evil.
So, this idea of good and evil, it's even woven into the very concept of God in this Kabbalistic framework.
That's right. And it gets even wilder. He connects key biblical figures like Seth, Moses, David, Solomon, even Christ directly to the Kabbalistic tree of life.
Wait, are you saying he's suggesting they got their power from the Kabbalah?
Yeah, that's basically what he's saying. He believes they drew their royal scepters and pontifical crooks, essentially their authority and spiritual power, from this esoteric tradition. And then there's this idea of Adam Kadmon, the primordial Adam in Kabbalah.
Adam Kadmon. Yeah, I've heard that term before.
Right. So Levi describes him, and this is in line with Kabbalistic teaching, as a kind of original template for humanity. He's often depicted as this giant cosmic being, and we're basically living in his shadow.
Okay, so that's the Kabbalah in a nutshell. But Levi doesn't just stop there, right? He takes us on a whirlwind tour of how magic is manifested throughout history, starting with ancient Assyria.
Exactly. He kicks things off with the Assyrians and immediately highlights the figure of Zoroaster, who he sees as a pivotal figure in the history of magic. And he talks about their significant revelations concerning, guess what? Magnetism.
Magnetism. Wow, okay, that's kind of ahead of its time, isn't it?
Right. And he talks about their mastery of initiation rites and how they even had the ability to exert influence over animals. But he also points out that they eventually declined, and part of that he attributes to their priesthood becoming arrogant and misusing their magical power.
Ah, so a classic tale of hubris and the dangers of unchecked power. What's next on Levi's historical magic tour?
Next stop, India.
Interesting. What's his take on Indian magic?
Well, Levi makes some pretty, let's say, bold claims about India. He identifies it as the land where Cain's descendants settled, calling it the mother of idolatry.
Whoa, that's a pretty loaded statement.
Yeah.
So is he basically dismissing Indian magical traditions as all bad?
Not exactly. He does mention the doctrines of the gymnosophists, those ancient Indian philosophers who often lived really ascetic lives. He even traces the origins of Gnosticism back to India. But then he gets into what he calls the black magic of the Upanishad, which is an Upanishad, a sacred Hindu text. So it seems like he had a pretty specific lens through which he viewed India, seeing both its profound spiritual concepts and the potential for those concepts to be corrupted.
A mixed bag then. All right, so we've got Assyria and India. What's next?
Well, after India, Levi shifts his focus to ancient Greece. And here he paints a really fascinating picture of Orpheus, not just as a poet, but as a poetic creator, a hierophant, someone who initiated others into these sacred mysteries.
So Orpheus is more than just a guy who wrote some sad songs about losing his wife. He's like a proto-magician.
Right. And Levi emphasizes Pythagorean philosophy, with its focus on numbers as the foundation of reality and the importance of self-knowledge. But then he draws this really interesting contrast between Plato and Aristotle.
Okay, how does he differentiate those two philosophical giants in relation to magic?
Oh, he sees Plato as more poetic, someone who focused on harmony and these perfect ideal forms, whereas Aristotle, he portrays him as more rational, emphasizing logic and empirical observations. Like he's highlighting this ancient tension between intuition and reason, something we're still grappling with today.
Yeah, I guess those debates never really go away, do they? So that's the grand sweep of magic in ancient civilizations. But Levi also introduces us to some specific individuals who've shaped Western esoteric thought.
Oh, absolutely. And we're talking about a whole cast of characters. Some are familiar names like Nicholas Flamel, Bernard Trebisson, Basil Valentine, all big names in the world of alchemy. Then he mentions Johannes Trithemius, who he considers a genuine master of magic, and Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, who he portrays as this super brilliant seeker who ends up finding only misery despite all his knowledge.
Oh, poor Agrippa. Knowledge isn't always a blessing, I guess. And then, of course, there's Paracelsus, who can forget Paracelsus.
Exactly. Levi highlights Paracelsus and his focus on what he called occult medicine, emphasizing the mysterious properties of blood and the role of magnetism in healing.
It's amazing how these individuals, each with their unique approaches and legacies, have all contributed to this rich tapestry of Western magic and mysticism. But then Levi throws in some real curveballs, right? He brings in figures like Count Cagliostro.
Oh, yeah, Cagliostro. That guy's a real enigma. Levi brings him up with all his wild claims about being an agent of the Knights Templar and possessing the secret to immortality.
Okay, so now we're getting into some real conspiracy theory territory.
And it gets even weirder when Levi starts talking about Jacques Cazot and his prophecies, which Levi interprets through a Kabbalistic lens. He even connects Cazot's novel, The Diable Moreau, which, by the way, is a pretty wild read itself, to the Kabbalistic concepts of Lilith and Nehama. And then, boom, we're into Franz Mesmer and his theories of animal magnetism.
Whoa, animal magnetism? Isn't that the thing where people were supposedly being healed through, like, invisible forces? I feel like we're going from ancient magic to the beginnings of modern science here.
It really is this bridge between the spiritual and the scientific. And it's fascinating how Levi tries to weave all these seemingly disparate threads together into a coherent whole.
So where does the astral light fit into all of this? He talks about that a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah, the astrolight is absolutely central to Levi's understanding of magic. He describes it as a kind of universal fluid, a face that pervades everything. And it has this dual nature, right? When used wisely, it can be incredibly beneficial, life-giving even. But if it's misused or misunderstood, it can become really destructive. It's like, fire. It can warm your house or burn it down.
That's a powerful analogy. So he's saying the astral light is the source of things like magnetism and clairvoyance.
Exactly. He believes it's the underlying medium through which these phenomena operate. But he's also really cautious about it, warning about the dangers of misusing this power. He talks about the creation of fluidic larvae, or elementary spirits, which are basically thought forms given a kind of semi-existence through excessive imagination and uncontrolled sensory experiences.
Okay, so that sounds kind of spooky. Like you can accidentally create these things just by thinking too hard about them.
That's the gist of it, yeah. So you got to be careful with that astral light, according to Levi. And all of this whole discussion of magic, it inevitably bumps up against religion, right? And Levi has some really interesting things to say about the relationship between the two.
So what's his take on magic and religion? Are they like sworn enemies or can they coexist?
Well, Levi argues that true religion isn't about blind faith or following the crowd. He says it's about a direct experience of the divine, something attained by those who have reached a certain level of spiritual insight.
So it's about personal experience and understanding,
Yeah.
rather than dogma or blind belief.
Exactly. And he sees this tension between what he calls profane and mystic schools of thought. He actually thinks these anarchic mystics are the most dangerous because they confuse what he calls the intellectual light, which represents true spiritual enlightenment, with the astral light, which is much more changeable and potentially deceptive. And this, he believes, is what leads them into black magic.
So he's drawing a very clear line between genuine spiritual development and the misuse of occult forces.
Mhm.
But what about the church's historical stance on magic? They haven't exactly been fans, have they?
No, not really. And Levi addresses this head on. He talks about how around the time of Christ, the oracles, those figures believed to speak with divine authority, supposedly fell silent. He references that famous saying, "Great Pan is dead." And he interprets this within his own framework as a major shift in spiritual paradigms. He also brings up the story of Simon Magus, which is like one of the earliest examples of the church condemning magic. And then, of course, there's the suppression of Gnosticism and other sects deemed heretical by the church.
So Levi's trying to walk a fine line here. He's arguing that true magic actually aligns with genuine religion, while at the same time distancing himself from those practices historically condemned by the church.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act. And it gets even more complex when he starts talking about the relationship between magic and society. He makes this really intriguing comment about the Tower of Babel, which he interprets as a failed experiment in socialistic equality.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's unexpected. So is he saying that attempts to create a more egalitarian society are doomed to fail?
Well, it's not quite that simple, but he is suggesting that forcing equality without genuine understanding and spiritual development can backfire. And then he gets into the historical persecution of people accused of practicing magic. He brings up really tragic examples like Michael Servetus, who was burned at the stake for heresy, and Gilles de Laval, aka Bluebeard, who was condemned for all sorts of horrific crimes, including sorcery. But he also suggests that a lot of what was attributed to magic throughout history might actually have been due to, mental illness or hallucinations.
Yeah, that makes sense. Back then, they didn't really understand mental health the way we do now. So anything that seemed out of the ordinary could easily be chalked up to magic or demonic influence.
Exactly. He even references that infamous case of the possessed nuns of Loudun and Urbain Grandier, which, looking back, it's hard not to see how psychological factors might have been at play there.
So is he saying magic doesn't exist? That it's all just superstition and misunderstanding?
No, not at all. He firmly believes in the existence of a transcendent magic, but he's also acknowledging the complexity of these historical accounts and how much of it might have been colored by factors beyond our control.
So it's a nuanced perspective, to say the least.
Definitely. And he goes on to discuss the Freemasons, specifically the legend of Hiram Abiff, which he interprets as an allegory for achieving mastery and power through science and wisdom. He also mentions the Knights Templar and the whole black magic scandal that led to their downfall, which, let's face it, is a story that never gets old. And then, of course, the Comte de Saint-Germain pops up again, adding his usual air of mystery to the narrative.
Okay, so we've gone from ancient Assyria to the Freemasons and the Knights Templar. What about Levi's own time, the 19th century? What was his take on the state of magic in his own era?
Well, he observed the rise of what he called magnetic mystics and materialists, people who were trying to reconcile these like emerging scientific understandings of energy and magnetism with more traditional spiritual and mystical ideas.
So a kind of proto-New Age movement in a way.
Yeah, I guess you could say that. He talks about Emanuel Swedenborg with his visions of the afterlife, and Charles Fourier, who had these utopian socialist ideas, although Levi seemed a bit skeptical of Fourier's emphasis on the unrestrained expression of passion. He also mentions this guy, Eugene Vintras, who started a short-lived religious movement called the New Church, and the growing interest in spirit writing, which of course is a big part of spiritualism.
So basically, a lot of the themes we see popping up in modern spirituality and esoteric thought were already starting to brew back then.
Exactly. And amidst all of this, Levi keeps reiterating his belief in the existence of this transcendent magic. He argues that when it's properly understood and practiced, it actually aligns with true religion and ultimately contributes to human progress.
So for Levi, magic isn't some like spooky, forbidden thing. It's actually a path to knowledge and enlightenment if you approach it the right way.
That's the key takeaway, for sure. He's not saying magic is easy or without its dangers, but he firmly believes in its potential for good.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into Eliphas Levi's history of magic, what do you think are the most important insights for our listener to take away?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that Levi presents magic not as mere superstition or trickery, but as a profound science, deeply rooted in his understanding of the Kabbalah. He sees it as a force that's manifested in countless ways throughout history, sometimes for noble purposes, sometimes for less noble ones, and he emphasizes the importance of understanding its history and the different ways it's been interpreted and practiced if we want to grasp its true potential.
It's almost like he's suggesting that the future is contained within the past, and vice versa. By understanding these historical perspectives on magic, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the questions we're grappling with today, both spiritual and scientific.
Exactly. And it leads to a really crucial question, something for you, our listener, to ponder. Given Levi's intricate and somewhat complex perspective, how do you think our understanding of magic will evolve in the future? What are those big, enduring questions about reality, human potential, and the hidden forces at work in the universe that these ancient texts continue to raise for us today?
That's a fantastic question to leave you with, and we encourage you to dive into Eliphas Levi's history of magic yourself and explore these ideas further. There's a lot to unpack in there, and it's a fascinating journey, to say the least. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah. Okay. So, like I was saying in my last video, I think a lot of people don't have an idea of what magic actually is, and they think that magic is what they've been shown in cartoons and movies. And I'm learning more every day by day because This guy is very interesting, Mr. Eliphas Levi. And, I made a couple of mistakes in my other video, so I want to correct it in this video. Shout out to the people in the comment section who let me know that I had the incorrect birthday on the calculator. So that way, that's why I got the wrong measurement. And one of the reasons is I don't know what's the issue with Derek's calculator, but when you put in a date, it changes it automatically. I don't know why it's doing that. So it might be a bug with the website, but I definitely put in 1810 and then it switched it for some reason. And I'll show you here now. Let's see if it happens now. So let's say I write June 3rd, 1987, and then I'll write February 8th, 2026. Okay, so it's not doing it now, but sometimes it glitches for some reason. Like you'll write a date and then I guess if I press, I don't know what I press, but I think it's enter or something. But anyways, his birthday is actually February 8th, 1810. And this year's Super Bowl will be his 216th birthday, not his 218th. Whenever you guys are using the Derek's calculator, it didn't happen now, but just be very careful because it might change the numbers that you typed in. Always double and triple check. And it actually happened to me when I was doing one of my decode live streams, because I went back and looked at those live streams and it did it. But I caught on right during the live stream. So just double check at any time you guys are doing the decodes, because you don't want to end up like me saying a number that's incorrect in the stream and then people are criticizing you saying that you got it wrong. But it's not that I got it wrong. It's an error on the website. But I should have still double checked. So it's still my fault. Anyways, we mentioned in the last video how February 8th, 1810 will be Eliphas Levi's 216th birthday. And of course, that's the day of the Super Bowl, right? And the Super Bowl will be at Levi Stadium. And of course, if the Rams are there, they'll be there with 666 all-time wins, because that's a big number with the Beast and Revelation. And of course, Levi is popular for creating the Baphomet, which is associated with Lucifer and Satan, even though I think he denied it in some of his texts. But yeah, think about how 6 times 6 times 6 is 216. And of course, the Rams, they have the GOAT logo, similar to what's shown on the Baphomet. And I don't know what you guys think about the Baphomet's feet. Is that the feet of a goat, or is that the feet of a horse? I don't know. Some might call that, saying that those are the feet of a goat, but I mean, you can argue that those are the feet of a horse too. I don't know. I think Eliphas Levi will be able to tell us, but he died a long time ago, so he won't be able to confirm whether that's a goat's feet or maybe the feet of a horse. Anyways, shout out to the people who listened to my video and they did their own research, because they pointed out how if the Rams do win the Super Bowl, they'll get to 667. Just like how the Eagles last year got to 667 by winning the Super Bowl against the Kansas City Chiefs. And in the extended gematria cipher, Eliphas Levi, his name is 667. So I mean, it's obvious that they're going to be paying tribute to this man at the Super Bowl. Obvious. It's very clear. And again, Levi equals 60, like how this is Super Bowl 60. Because I had the wrong year on the calculator, I noticed that he died. I thought he died 113 days after his birthday, but he actually died 112 days after his birthday. In Catholicism and mathematics is 112, just like Super Bowl. But yeah, this guy very important, and it makes this piece makes it all come together. It's very clear what they're doing at the Super Bowl, especially it being held in Santa Clara, where the 49ers play. Of course, the Church of Satan is located in San Francisco. The Church of Satan has taken a lot of the works of Eliphas Levi. And yeah, his book, The History of Magic, I ordered it. I'm waiting for it. I bought the hard copy. It's around $24 if anybody's interested. It's gonna be a long read, but I'll take my time because I do want to get a better understanding of what the history of Magic, a better understanding of Magic. A lot of you think that Magic is pulling a rabbit out of a hat, and you're wrong. That's not what they're using in the NFL or any sports leagues. They're using magnets. And Eliphas Levi spoke about magnetism. He spoke about that. And again, we pointed this out yesterday in the live stream, how the history of Magic equals Order of Illuminati. You know? And yeah, so just be careful if you guys are still thinking that it's gonna be a different team in the Super Bowl. Yeah, and you know what I've noticed too. You see how so they said that the Pope is from Chicago, right? And that's why the Bears were doing so good in the playoffs. So what they do, they eliminate the Bears 18 weeks after the Pope's birthday. So the Bears' final game synced up perfectly with the Pope. And now next week, there's a rumor out there. Well, not a rumor because it actually happened, but there's a trend that every time there's a new Pope, the Seahawks find a way to reach the Super Bowl. It happened twice, and this year they also clinched the number 1 seed after a new Pope was elected for the 3rd consecutive time. In 2005, Pope Benedict was elected, and they had the number 1 seed, and they lost in the Super Bowl. In 2013, Pope Francis was elected, and the Seahawks had the number 1 seed that year, and they won the Super Bowl that year. This year, they did get the number 1 seed right after Pope Leo was elected. But the question is, are they going to do it for the 3rd straight time? And we spoke about the narrative in the last video about the Seahawks' possible Super Bowl appearance, but I think they're gonna do the Seahawks just like how they did the Bears. The Bears have the Pope connection because he's from Chicago, like they are, like how they play in Chicago. The Seahawks have the Pope connection because every year there's a new Pope. They find their way to the Super Bowl, but I think they're gonna eliminate the Seahawks just like how they eliminated the Bears. Right? The big number with the Seahawks is it's always been 19. This has been a huge number with this franchise. Where any team from that city, also with the Mariners, this is always a huge number with that city. They're gonna eliminate the Seahawks just like how they eliminated the Bears. Bears equals 18. They got eliminated 18 weeks after the Pope's birthday. Seattle equals 19. And let's see what happens 19 weeks after the Pope's birthday if they still have a season left. If they have another game left in their season, which I doubt. All right, but yeah. So if you guys want to experiment with this narrative, go right ahead. Like I said, the Seahawks could be coming at 19-19 in the postseason. But I just want my people to be on this narrative. Again, 6 times 6 times 6 equals 216. Levi's 216th birthday will be on February 8th, 2026. At Levi's Stadium, the GOAT team can be there on 666 wins. And also, I can't say much more, but, those of you on the Patreon, please read the notes because we already have the Super Bowl figured out already. We already know who's going to win the Super Bowl. Now I'm just working on trying to predict. It's going to be hard, but trying to predict, I don't know. Actually, I could share this with you guys, with those of you on YouTube. Because of the Super Bowl is a 666 tribute, like how last year it was a 666 tribute. Add up all the points in the postseason. There needs to be 202 or 204. Actually, should I do it now? Nah, I'm not gonna do it now. Just add up all the points scored in the playoffs this year. It's in a range from 200 to 210 points left. So they have the conference championship and the Super Bowl. So if between the Patriots game and the Rams game, let's say there's 50 points in each game, then in the Super Bowl they'll need another 100 points. But I think they're probably not gonna get to 666. But there needs to be another 200 plus points to get to 666. 666 total points in the postseason this year, which is a possibility. So let's see how many points is scored in this week's conference championship, and then we'll have a better understanding on the Super Bowl. But that's something that I was looking into, but doesn't have to happen. Doesn't have to happen. Be very careful with the Patriots and Denver Broncos game. If you're on the Patreon, then you know who I like definitively. I'm 100% certain that team will win. I gave you guys the Rams pick for free. But again, there is a narrative for the Seahawks. So if you like the Seahawks, good luck with that. But yeah, so yeah, I want to apologize if I misspoke in my other video. But it wasn't my fault. I promise you, there's something wrong with the website. It happens to me multiple times already. Yeah, I'm gonna keep exploring more on this magical theory because it's making a lot of sense to me. Now I understand why we see so many sacrifices around the championship game. So many people die. And now, what I've been learning is that Levi was teaching about the spirit, like the spiritual connection to magic, and how spirits. I don't know how this works. Stuff is mind blowing, but they have some type of influence on the living. So this stuff is way beyond my understanding. But I'm always been open minded. I don't act like I know it all. If there is some type of spiritual powers controlling the sports games, I'm open to learn about it. But it's definitely mind blowing if that is the case. And if these people have the power that they I think they have, there's no way we can ever take these people down. If they have spiritual powers, how can you fight that? But I still think people need to learn about this and know what's going on and be aware. I do think that's important, even if I don't think we can probably stop it. But yeah, and yeah, I want to thank all the people that let me know about the error, because that was a key that brought it all together, the 216 stuff. What else? I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it for now. But yeah, I want to thank everybody for joining, and I appreciate everybody. And please, if you can leave some helpful comments and further research, I will really appreciate it. All right, you guys, take care, enjoy your Wednesday, and good luck in all your endeavors.